Record. All right. Well, hello and welcome to another day of my videos. This is my channel, Beat Slavery with Racha. My name is Racha Hafar, and today I'm having a great friend of mine as a guest. This is Robyn, and she will be talking to us about what human trafficking looks like in the US. So, hi, Robyn. Thank you for being with me today.
Hey, Rasha. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, my pleasure. I'm so happy to have you and to have you share with us your information about what human trafficking looks like in the US. So I want you to first of all share with us who are you and how did you get involved in this very important work? Why are you passionate about human trafficking, and why do you think other people should also get engaged?
Yeah, sure. So I did my master's degree in diplomacy and international development, and I've always had an interest in human rights and injustice, poverty, education, women's education, um, and those are really the root causes of human trafficking, of sex and labor trafficking that we're seeing. So following my master's degree, I took a job working on a federal grant called Rescue and Restore that worked just with victims of foreign national victims of labor trafficking in the United States, meaning anybody that's in the United States, they're a victim of trafficking, and the trafficking occurred in the United States, and they don't have legal status. Often they ended up without legal status due to the trafficking. So they came on legal status and it was taken from them and they were exploited. So my first job in trafficking was dealing with these types of victims.
That's
Um,
very interesting. Yeah.
yeah, I was actually when I took the job surprised that that was a full-time job in the United States, working just with foreign national victims. I thought that's a full-time job, and then I found out that this job was all across the country with the
Yeah.
same funding.
Yeah. So you thought that, that was not something that would take or like need a full-time job because you didn't think it was that widespread, right?
Right. And especially in Kentucky. So I live in Lexington, Kentucky,
Yeah.
and it was a full-time job here. So what I quickly learned is if this is full-time, nonstop work in Kentucky, in the rest of the country, especially states that are see higher rates of trafficking, Florida, Texas, California, border state, it's a really big issue that we need to be addressing.
Yeah. So what kept you working on this? What is your motive today after looking back to those years that keeps you working on this cause?
The biggest thing was knowing that it's happening. It's happening in all of our communities across the whole country, big and small, urban, rural, in various industries all across the country, to men and women, children, adults, Americans, foreign nationals. It's happening everywhere, and I saw that with my own eyes, and to see that it was happening on such grand levels that um, a lot of times we just walked right past. Literally,
Yeah.
you could walk right past it and not even see it. So a lot of my first job was focused on awareness and educating the community, which is really the number one step in addressing trafficking everywhere, is awareness and education.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. That's very important. So what could you tell us about what human trafficking looks like in the US?
So in the United States, we see both labor and sex trafficking, men and women, adults and children, like I was saying before. And first, I'd like to talk a little bit about the definition of trafficking, because that can be what's so tricky and hard to understand.
Yeah.
So for human trafficking, we like to think of the crime as one umbrella, and an umbrella crime, human trafficking, and then underneath the umbrella are different sections of the crime. So human trafficking in general is exploiting somebody for profit, is what it comes down to. One person or many people, but they are exploiting another human being for profit.
Hmm.
So under that umbrella, we break it down into sex and labor trafficking because they look different. For sex trafficking, you have to have two elements present, element A and element B. A is there has to be commercial sex. Commercial sex is sex or exchange in exchange for something of commercial value. We often think of money, but it can be anything: money, drugs, somewhere to sleep at night, a bus ticket, a pack of cigarettes. It's more than just money and drugs. So an exchange, a commercial exchange. So that's element A. For it to be trafficking, you have to have element B present, and that is force, fraud, or coercion. The person involved in the sex act has to be doing so due to force, fraud, or coercion. So if you have element A and element B, so commercial sex act with force, fraud, or coercion, you're likely looking at the crime of human trafficking. The only exception to that crime for sex trafficking, or to that rule, is if the victim is under the age of 18. If there's a minor in the United States involved in sex trafficking, that element B of force, fraud, and coercion does not have to be present.
Mm-hmm.
Any minor involved in commercial sex is a victim of human trafficking. There's no such thing as a child prostitute.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that we have to remember
Yeah.
as well.
That's a big misconception. Yeah. I talked about that a little bit earlier in my videos. It's something that you still come across when you see some articles, and it's fascinating to see how media could be really so uneducated about such a topic that's really well like it's really well surfaced in the media sphere in the US. So I'm really still in shock when I see that some media would say, like minor prostitutes are found in the
Exactly.
situation. Or yeah, it's fascinating that there's still a lack of education, or they're just trying to hunt for the buzz on the media outlet, but it's not just it's not the reality. They don't know that by law it's not that case, that minors are minors, and not they're not supposed to be called as prostitutes. Yeah, thank you for making that.
Yeah. And even if the minor, which is under the age of 18, says they are doing this themselves, it doesn't matter. A minor cannot consent to this. So
Yeah.
we have to remember that also. And then there's labor trafficking, which is pretty much working due to force, fraud, or coercion. And you don't feel that you're free to leave. If you leave, some kind of harm will come to you.
Yeah.
So labor trafficking, and there are lots of gray areas. It's not a black and white crime, but those are the basic.
And that what makes it very complex. So what are the cases that you've come across that you know about, that you think you should tell us about, so that we also can be aware of what's going on around us?
Yeah, so one way I like to break it down is thinking of it as small, medium, and large scale trafficking situations that we see in the US. So for example, large scale trafficking would be like sophisticated national, international crime networks. It's very organized. They're very highly organized in recruitment, in transportation, and exploitation. It runs like a big business.
Yeah.
And it's often very well connected in its country of origin.
Yeah.
So that's a large scale. It runs like a big business. And we see this in corporations, maybe in fishing boats off the coast of Southeast Asia, and fishing companies. There are human trafficking, labor trafficking cases, and you might have 500, 1,000 victims.
So where did you say was that?
In Southeast Asia.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
In the fishing industry.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
that's the large scale that we see. We don't see that very much in the United States. There have been some cases, but that's not what we're seeing. What we see is more medium and small scale trafficking. The medium scale it's often specializes in a particular source and destination country, and it includes one or several perpetrators and several victims. And so that can look like farms and farm owners. It can look like brothels. It can look like with multiple women that he's exploiting. It can look like a salon owner. It can look like panhandling, where it still looks like more of a business. It's run more like a business, but it's a smaller scale. It usually doesn't cross borders. the perpetrator will often focus on one source country, maybe where their hometown is, or where they're from, or where they know there are lots of vulnerable people.
Yeah.
We do see that in the United States. What we're seeing a lot more of and becoming more aware of is the small scale trafficking. And small scale trafficking really focuses on recruiting a particular victim. So one person. It's often one perpetrator, one victim. It might be a neighbor. It might be a friend, a boyfriend, a family member. And that's what we're seeing growing in the rural areas all across the country. Often the exchange, it's a sex trafficking, and the exchange is a child exchange for drugs.
Mm-hmm.
We see a lot of that in Kentucky.
That's really sad. Yeah.
So
I've heard
yeah, lots of
where
cases like
mothers, yeah, I've heard of cases where mothers are selling their daughters so that they would get drugs in return.
yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Or
Yeah.
maybe they're rent paid, or anything that has commercial value.
Yeah. And what other forms of labor trafficking you would find that doesn't necessarily involve undocumented immigrants?
So for labor trafficking, I worked with American victims as well.
Mhm.
We often see American victims of labor trafficking in panhandling situations, so door-to-door sales.
Okay.
Um, a lot of labor trafficking we see for national victims, and it can be in a variety of different situations. There's an agency called Polaris Project
Yeah.
that has a report called The Typology of Modern Slavery, and
Mhm.
it covers all of the different typologies of trafficking that we're seeing in the US.
Yeah.
Some of the top ones that we talk about.
Yeah, they're doing
Yeah,
fantastic work. Yeah.
yeah, it's great. They talk about domestic servitude, agricultural labor, restaurant and food services, health and beauty services, janitorial services, peddling. Those are some of the top
Yeah.
forms of labor trafficking that we're seeing. So just depending on where you are in the country, that can be with Americans or foreign nationals.
Yeah. And how long do you think it would take for, like, how long would a business would, let's say a salon, a nail salon would be trafficking women, or yeah, trafficking women in it, until someone actually realizes that and reports it, and and until this is something that comes to the attention of the officials, the law enforcement? Like, how long could people be in that situation for?
I'm sure it's been going on for decades in salons. Um,
Yeah, but I mean,
as
like
long as they're open.
a salon
It,
per se, like in the salon per se, how long could the victim be there um, before someone rescue them? It could take years, right?
oh yeah, yeah. They could be. I'm sure there are people working in labor trafficking situations that have been in those situations for decades in the
Yeah,
United States.
it's really,
And most of the cases are not found.
yeah, that's really scary. And that's why, it's very important that we insist on the importance of raising awareness and educating people on
Mhm.
this. And I think it has to really transcend the sphere of policy and just activism or the civil society or the organizations. I think it has to go into, like, more in depth into educational material that goes to teach kids from a younger age what exploitation looks like, and how could you become a victim, and what to do if you feel that you find yourself in such a situation.
Mhm.
I really think there is still a huge lack of awareness, not only in the US, but I mean, the US is really well ahead when it comes to awareness about human trafficking, because the crime, if you talk to people, the majority of people, they would say, oh yeah, I know what human trafficking means. But when you talk to people all
Mhm.
around the world, in certain countries, people don't even know what human trafficking means. They don't know what it looks like, and they don't even want to accept that that thing is happening in their country. And
Mhm.
that's a struggle for us as global activists, to bring the topic to the surface and shed light on it, and make it something that people should take as an emergency. Because we can't, you know, I don't think any of us should rest while we know that this horrific crime is happening in our backyards, in our neighborhoods, in our, you know, in the neighborhood pizzeria, or in the neighborhood's restaurant, or the nail salon, or it's really terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
that brings up a good point also, Rasha, that the importance of campaigns, videos like you're doing right now, to also make sure not just we're getting the good information, but to really look for that helps, but make sure we're also aware of what is not accurate,
yeah,
and that doesn't cloud us in seeing also some, for lack, rumors that are perpetrated more by social media.
yeah, that's for sure. That's why I actually had my second or third video. My third video was about the misconceptions and myths about human trafficking, what people think it is, and what it actually is on the ground. And you did shed light on a lot of it, talking about minors and talking about, you know, how a lot of Americans don't even think that Americans are trafficked in the US. They think it's only immigrants and foreigners, which is something that is kind of a conception that a lot of people around the world think that's the case, that trafficking includes transportation, that includes someone coming from abroad, and that's why they are trafficked. So that's, yeah, that's very important. So what do you say as your advice for our viewers today, especially for the youth, because I really believe this topic should also transcend from the spheres where it's dominated more with, you know, the expert generations, the older generations who are working on it, for it to go and touch down on the youth generations, to be a grassroots work for youth to adopt it and feel comfortable working on it. Because I'm sure there's a lot of intimidation when people think of human trafficking. They think of a very complex crime, and they're like, especially the youth, they would be like, how am I going to work on this? So I want you and the viewers to, like, I want you to tell us, how can we make this something that resonates with youth movements, with youth activism, with youth standing up for democracy and freedoms and civic rights? How can we take this and bring it down to the youth generations to be able to work on it? What do you suggest for our viewers today to do so that they would be active in their communities?
I think it just, something that youth can do is being aware and spreading the education of what is human trafficking and what it looks like, being aware of things like, what does it mean to buy something that's fair trade? What does it mean, um, that what the country on the tag of your clothes says? Just to be aware of where the things that we consume and that we want come from,
Mhm.
and to really go to the websites and the information that's out there that is accurate, and just to spread that, and to know that these sensationalized rumors on Facebook, one in particular that's been very dangerous to the real issue of trafficking, is one spreading, if you're approached in Walmart by somebody, they're trying to traffic you, to not be fearful of human trafficking based on social media rumors, to really educate yourself on what it looks like, and how maybe you're even taking part of it on a bigger scale, an international scale, based on the products that you choose to buy, and making sure that you're aware of your friends and family and people, that could fall victim due to different vulnerabilities that they might have.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's also very important to note that, you know, youth populations are at a higher risk because they are in a big, they face a lot of vulnerabilities due to, you know, unemployment, or family issues, or as we see in the US, there's a lot of, you know, like the teen runaways. So trafficking can happen for these teens. It can happen to the kids who are in foster system. So it's also very important to show that this crime also affects a lot of the youth populations because of the migrations, because of unemployment, because of all these issues that affect their livelihoods, therefore puts them in such a vulnerable situation. Thank you so much, Ruben. This has been really wonderful. I hope that I hope that our viewers can really take a take an understanding of what we talked about today, and take it further into putting it in action, and reach out to the local communities, see what is there that they can be involved in, and work with organizations, bring the topic to organizations that are working on root causes related to human trafficking, yet they're not really involved with human trafficking. um, yeah
And
I,
I'd like to say too, with that, just to any youth, to anybody who wants to be involved, do your research on the organization.
yeah,
Make sure that it's an organization that is established, that is doing the work that you support, that you feel that you support. And there are lots of good resources online. There are lots of federal resources. Polaris Project is a great place to start. But do your research even from starting with the organization that you choose to support. And I also want to make sure that everybody has the human trafficking hotline number. An easy step for everybody. Put this number in your phone right now. You
yeah,
can call the hotline with any questions or concerns. Are you ready for it? The
yeah,
number?
go ahead.
Okay, 1-888-373-7888. The
Good.
1-888-373-7888. If you are ever suspicious or you have any question or concern that there might be a trafficking situation, call that number. That's the first step you can do, which is helpful.
That's really great, and it's amazing that there is a hotline here and in a few other countries. But there's a huge lack of having this service in so many countries around the world, and
Yeah.
also the problem of finding resources in people's native languages. Now we're talking in English. We're only going to be reaching out to communities that speak the language. However, in so many other countries, um, people do not find the resources in their language, and that's also a barrier, and that's something that we have to work on, is also provide resources, material, educational material, in different languages. So that's also another challenge. But any final thoughts?
And that hotline, they'll serve any language. So
Yeah,
you can call the hotline even if you don't speak English, and they can
yeah, but it's
identify
it's it's in the US, so it's great
that.
as a
Yeah,
source in the US. Yeah,
US and Canada.
in the US
So
and Canada. Okay, that's great.
thank you
Yeah,
for the Canada.
that's amazing. Any final
Hopefully
thoughts
it
for us today?
keeps spreading. No, thank you so much, Rasha. This is exactly, I think, what needs to be done is just educating and spreading good resources, and keep doing what you're doing, and it will make a difference.
Thank you so much, Robyn. It was such a pleasure to have you with us today, and keep up the great work, because the world needs more people like you.
Oh, thank you, Rasha.
Thank you so much. Well, it was such a pleasure, and have a good day.
You too.
Bye bye.